Hello everyone. This is the 11th part of the story, Blade God of Blood. Chapter 21 Ancient One. Hand Union is almost gone, who cares about that? You are dead, you are all dead, ha ha ha! The ninjas on the ground laughed horribly. It was the first time that Hand Society had suffered such heavy damage, but no one could defeat their Hand Society, because they had the demon beast. The person who can kill me has not yet been born. Bert snorted coldly, raised his finger and pointed at Alexandra, and shouted, "Attack!" A group of men immediately shot Alexandra on the ground, but shockingly, all the bullets were deflected by the red light. "It's useless, Vampire Clan, today is the day I exterminate your clan." Alexandra climbed up from the ground and shouted fiercely. At this moment, the red light on her body has disappeared, and everyone can clearly see what she looks like now. The former Alexandra was a noblewoman, but now she is a demon nearly 3 meters tall, with scarlet scales all over her body, and eyes full of evil, fury, and cruelty. "I'm going to kill you!" The power of the beast is extremely strong, and Alexandra couldn't control her emotions at all. She stepped on the concrete floor and jumped high, like a gorilla, and slammed into Bert. "Is this a copycat version of the Red Hulk?" Bert appeared more than 10 meters away like teleportation. Alexandra landed on the ground with a bang, and the ground sunk into 2 big pits. Seeing that she missed Bert, Alexandra became angrier and charged wildly at Bert all the way, and the ground crumbled everywhere she went. "Shoot and stop her from getting close to Blood God!" Mercury hurriedly shouted, and the group of men fired again, but it was no different from the last time. All the bullets were thrown away, which did not cause any damage to Alexandra at all but made her even angrier. Crazy attacks fell on Bert like a hammer. Seeing the change below, Frank didn't care about fighting Daredevil anymore, and hurriedly picked up the Barrett M82A1 sniper rifle next to him to prepare for sniping. Daredevil felt the monster and hesitated, saying, "Why is everything so strange tonight? Totally out of line." Bert relied on his speed to avoid Alexandra's attack again and again. Alexandra became more and more violent. Seeing that she could not hit Bert, she turned around and prepared to deal with others. Only killing could heal her anger. "This can't be done, my subordinates are very precious." Seeing Alexandra shifting the target, Bert shook his head and said, "Alexandra, please die." "You!" Alexandra roared, but the next moment she fell to the ground in pain, and then exploded with a bang. In the firelight and thick smoke, her flesh and blood fell everywhere like rain. "In this case, Alexandra can't die any longer." Everyone was stunned. What's the situation? Such a terrible monster, how did it explode? Madame Gao turned her head and asked in shock, "Blood God, what have you done?" Bert said casually, "I didn't do anything, maybe her spirit has gone crazy." Madame Gao said speechlessly, "This is not a martial arts novel, and it's not a matter of cultivating the spirit." Bert shrugged and didn't say much. The matter was very simple. The dagger Bert gave Madame Gao was not only made of blood but also has a special C4 explosive produced by Stark Group. "Well, the explosives are big. How did I mix it with blood and put it in the dagger?" "Simple, don't you know that there is a thing called PIM particles in this world?" Just now, Bert did 2 things. One was to remove the PIM particles, and the other was to detonate the explosives, at the cost of losing a little blood of his own. "No!" Seeing that Alexandra turned into a monster and died tragically, Bakuto knew that Hand Association was completely defeated today, and passed out in despair on the spot. Bert was about to sneer. At this moment, the sky suddenly cracked a pitch-black gap, and an angry, brutal, and evil aura gushed out from the gap, and everyone on the pier felt icy cold and couldn't help but shiver, like when a rabbit met a ferocious tiger. Not only that, but all kinds of crazy evil thoughts popped up in everyone's mind, the kind of things that you usually think about but don't dare to do at all. And this is in just one breath. Bert's situation is much better than others. He endured the evil thoughts of controlling the world in his heart, and raised his head to look at the crack in the sky. He saw an indescribable creature behind the crack, which made people feel extremely crazy, brutal, and evil. At this moment, this unknown creature is full of rage, and it wants to squeeze into this world and kill everyone. Bert couldn't help but swallow his saliva. Before he could come up with a countermeasure, suddenly, a golden magic circle composed of many patterns appeared out of thin air at the crack, blocking the evil aura on the opposite side, and even started repairing the cracks with golden silk thread. The unidentified creature, who was still aggressive just now, was like a mouse seeing a cat. It instantly restrained all its aura and fled back. At the same time, it shouted with mental power, "Dewey, I'm just passing by." Although he knew he shouldn't laugh, Bert wanted to laugh. Is this guy too cowardly? "I'm sorry, you need tolls to pass through this world." Accompanied by this sound, a colorful sword light that almost filled the entire world lit up, and slammed heavily on the unknown creature across the space, and the unknown creature made a shrill scream. Then it was gone because the space crack was healed by the golden circle. As soon as the crack closed, many people collapsed to the ground, sweating profusely. Everything just now was too exciting for them. Bert ignored the others. He looked up at the sky and said with a look of longing, "One sword shines across the 19 continents, and the sword she extends across 30,000 miles. Master Gui is really amazing." Note: in all of the Chinese fanfics of Marvel, they always use Gui as Ancient One's name. But there is no mention of her name in the movie. No idea why they give her a name like that, but in almost 100 plus Chinese Marvel fanfics, she is Gui. In the comics, the Ancient One was an ancient Tibetan magician named Yao. Note end. Don't think about martial arts, it is Sorcerer Supreme's magic, the sacred sword of Emperor Vishanti. Madame Gao was also amazed. As she thought of something, she asked in surprise, "You know the name of the Sorcerer Supreme?" Bert snorted coldly. "How do you know that?" "Kamartaj and Kunlun are allies, and I once hosted Kamartaj's mages." Madame Gao thought of something and said, "By the way, Dracula, the ancestor of the vampire, once had a conflict with Kamartaj. Maybe that's how you know." "Ah? What's the matter? Didn't Dracula get killed by Master Gui?" Bert was stunned for a moment and asked curiously, "Madame Gao is speechless. Where exactly are you from?" Mercury breathed a sigh of relief and couldn't help but ask Bert, "Blood God, what was that just now?" Bert said, "That is the beast that Han Society believed in. Its little minions were wiped out by us, so it came to find revenge." "Oh." Everyone suddenly realized, at this moment, Frank's voice came from a distance. "Who stopped the beast? How do you know that the golden circle is magical?" Bert turned his head and saw Frank, Natasha, Snowman all rushing over, and Daredevil was also far behind. "It is the Guardian of the Earth, the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One, who stopped the beast," Bert said respectfully. "With her here, no gods or demons would even think of entering the Earth with their bodies. This is why the Earth has been stable for so many years." "Guardian of the Earth, Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One?" Everyone was stunned. Obviously, except for Madame Gao, no one else has ever heard of this strange name. Bert said with a look of longing, "Yes, the Guardian of the Earth is also the most powerful person on the Earth. If her sword just slashed on the dock is probably gone." The others did not see the sword light, and their expressions were very dazed. Natasha couldn't help but ask, "Blood God, how strong is the Ancient One? Please call her Sorcerer Supreme, she has guarded the Earth for hundreds of years." Bert was a little displeased, he said. "If I wasn't a vampire, I would go to her to become her disciple and learn magic." Madame Gao secretly complained, "Are you talking about martial arts?" Bert continued, "Okay, don't talk about this. The police are coming soon, Mercury. Hurry up and drive the truck I specially prepared, Snowman. Prepare to set fire to the corpse, otherwise these ninjas will be resurrected." "Yes, Blood God." Although everyone still wanted to hear about the Ancient One, Bert didn't plan to talk about it. They could only execute the order first. Set fire to the corpse? When Daredevil heard this word, his brows were deeply wrinkled, and he couldn't help but ask, "Who are you?" Snowman shouted displeasedly. "Who allowed you to talk to the blood god like this?" "It's okay." Bert raised his hand and said to Daredevil, "We are a cooperative unit of S.H.I.E.L.D." When Natasha heard this, she couldn't help but glance at Bert. Why does this guy use the name S.H.I.E.L.D.? Daredevil looked blank. S.H.I.E.L.D.? Bert smiled. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a special agency under the World Security Council, responsible for managing weird events around the world. Its predecessor was the Strategic Science Corps, which is the agency where Captain America was. It turned out to be the institution where Captain America is located. Daredevil is awe-inspiring. In this world, American children grew up watching Captain America documentaries, and many people revere Captain America. Hand Society is an evil organization that believes in evil gods. Our mission this time is to destroy it. Bert continued, "You may not believe it, but these ninjas are actually not dead and can be resurrected, so we must burn them, otherwise there may be a plague. This is also the reason why we were ruthless before. They are no longer human." Dead and resurrected? Daredevil was surprised for a while. He thought for a while, and said, "Although it's hard to believe, even the heretic god appeared just now, it doesn't seem impossible. I hope you don't say anything about what happened tonight. You can't let the public know about this kind of thing," Bert said again. "Speaking of which, Daredevil, do you want to join S.H.I.E.L.D.? Director Nick Fury likes strong men like you." Daredevil was horrified when he heard the words, and he waved his hands again and again. "I don't want to join any organization. This was a misunderstood. I'm leaving." After speaking, Daredevil turned around and left. Too much happened tonight. He had to go back and think about it. "Daredevil, if you need help, you can come to us at any time," Bert shouted from behind Daredevil. The reason why he said so much, on the one hand, it was fun, on the other hand, it was to establish a relationship in advance. Daredevil is the head of the Defenders. The Defenders are a smaller version of Avengers. Daredevil didn't answer, and the figure disappeared quickly. Frank asked from the side, "Aren't you afraid that S.H.I.E.L.D. will trouble you for using their name? How can it be said indiscriminately? We are indeed working with S.H.I.E.L.D. now." Bert shrugged and continued, "Besides, I guess Director Fury won't care about this. Instead, he will take the credit, and then apply to the council for funds to prevent the evil spirits." Frank and Natasha were speechless because they knew that Nick Fury could do such a thing. In fact, Nick Fury did it afterward. After the World Security Council knew that there were evil gods in this world, they gave a large amount of money to S.H.I.E.L.D. to strengthen their defenses. Then, Nick Fury directly took 1/3 to build his secret bases. In his opinion, the more bases he has, the safer the world will be. By the way, the Hydra lurking in S.H.I.E.L.D. also quietly took away 1/3 of the funds. That is to say, the total funds that can be implemented into the Rio project are only 1/3 in total. This S.H.I.E.L.D. will end sooner or later. Mercury drove the big truck over, and Snowman took the men up to open the door at the back. There were 5 sleeping compartments lying inside. Frank glanced at it and asked, "What is this?" Bert said, "The freezer. Put them in the freezer and use them after decades, and they will still be alive." Frank was very surprised. "Isn't that something only exists in science fiction movies? Can technology do it now? Also, how did you have this? This Marvel world is filled with black technologies." Note: Black technology is the technology that is far more advanced than those of the real world. They are created by a category of humans called the Whispered. Note end. Bert smiled and said, "As for how I got this, it's very simple. I bought them on the black market for $50 million. In this country, there are very few things that money can't buy." Bert deeply suspects that Hydra is the seller because this style is very obvious. Hydras are people too, and they also need money. Frank asked in astonishment, $50 million? What are you doing with this amount of money? Bert said. The 5 fingers of Hand Union can be resurrected after death. I plan to freeze them all, and then find a place to bury them, so that no matter who they believe in, they can't be resurrected. Because they are not dead at all. Madame Gao smiled wryly. She did not expect the resurrection of Hand to be deciphered in this way. No wonder you didn't let us kill them. Everyone was stunned, and Frank reminded. Bert, their leader seems to be dead. Fortunately, there is only one, and resurrection takes a lot of time. Bert said. During this period, Hand will be without a leader. If we release the news, there will be many people who want to trouble them. Hand has countless enemies. This is indeed worse. Madame Gao sighed. However, Hand will not be destroyed so easily. When Alexandra is resurrected and finds Black Sky, she will come for you to get revenge. I'm waiting for her. Bert sneered and said to Madame Gao. Madame Gao, I will trouble you to take us to receive the inheritance of Hand Association, especially the keel. This is what I am determined to get. Note. The Hand worships the Black Sky. It is considered the greatest living weapon by them. Note end. Chapter 22 Dragon Skeleton. The elixir is in the city. I can take you to get it. Madame Gao said helplessly. As for the property of the Hand Association, I can help you get it, but only in North America, and I can't touch the property in Japan. In this city? Let's get it right away. Bert couldn't wait, he said to Mercury. Mercury, I'll leave the finishing touches here to you, what should be frozen, and what should be burned. As for the police, don't pay any attention. Mercury nodded. Yes, blood god, leave it to me. Everyone, this evening, we eliminated the evil Hand victoriously. This is very worth celebrating. I decided that tomorrow night, we will hold a celebration banquet. Then Bert shouted to everyone. In addition, everyone present will get an extra 3 months' salary as a bonus. Long live the blood god! Everyone cheered, and even Frank had a smile on his face. He was planning to move recently, and needed money urgently. Is this the elixir? Bert took the piece of white bone that Madame Gao handed over, only 10 centimeters long, and frowned. Why is it only a fragment, and that too small? We only have so much left. In fact, if it wasn't for searching Black Sky, we wouldn't even have left this part. This is equivalent to our lifespan. Madame Gao sighed. Don't underestimate this little bit. It's enough for 2 people to resurrect, and it can be fused at least 5 times. The elixir is quite durable, otherwise, our Hand will not last for so long. Like this? Bert wrapped the elixir with blood and found that the blood became very active. It seemed that the blood couldn't wait to absorb this elixir. Sure enough. Bert was overjoyed, but he didn't absorb it, and he had to rely on it to open the barrier underground. Bert put away the elixir and said, Go back. After receiving the inheritance of Hand, I will freeze you up like everyone else. I expected it long ago. Madame Gao did not beg for mercy and accepted her fate calmly. She glanced in the direction of Kunlun, and sighed in her heart. She could never return to Kunlun. Hand had 5 fingers. Everyone's dream was different, and Madame Gao, her dream was to return to Kunlun, but unfortunately, Kunlun will never accept her again. Note. Elixir or the substance or dragon bones are all the same. Note end. Because of Bert's high compensation, all residents moved out of the rental apartment in just 3 days, and the big word, demolition, was written on the wall, and it will be completely demolished in a few days. Under the moonlight, Bert took Madame Gao to the first floor of the long-term rental apartment silently. He didn't waste time and asked Madame Gao to guard the surrounding area. Quickly moved to the location of the barrier. The ability of Blood God is really useful. Madame Gao was stunned. If they were replaced, they would have to get a construction team to dig down. It was very troublesome. For the Blood God, it's easy to go down. After reaching the position of the barrier, Bert examined the surroundings, restored the shrunken elixir fragment to normal, and then controlled it to touch the glass-colored barrier like an energy shield. It must work, otherwise I can only grab that silly iron fist to do the job. Under Bert's nervous eyes, the elixir and the barrier melted into each other, like a red-hot iron rod being put into the snow. Bert was overjoyed. He increased his strength, the elixir moved forward, and while it kept disappearing, the barrier gradually dissipated at the place elixir was touching. The resistance in front suddenly disappeared, and the barrier opened. Although it was only a small hole thinner than chopsticks, it was enough for Bert. Bert excitedly flowed through the small hole in his blood form and entered the sealed land. It was not dark at all, because there was a complete dragon bone emitting a faint red light. It was like a dream, very magical. That's right, a complete dragon skeleton, and it is very huge. After Bert returned to human form, he was smaller than the rib of the other party. The dragon bones still glow? Bert laughed. With so many elixirs, not only could he improve his strength, but he could also cultivate a large number of warriors. In the Marvel Universe, there's never too much power. In the future, you will follow me to conquer the world. Bert walked to the front of the head of the elixir, patted the sharp dragon teeth with his hand, and said with a smile, as the saying goes, extreme joy leads to sadness. Suddenly, Bert's eyes flashed and he entered a world full of flames. In the sky, there was a 100-meter-long, winged Chinese dragon. The mighty dragon shrouded the whole world. What the hell? Isn't this dragon dead? Bert was shocked. At this moment, the dragon flew in front of Bert, and the scarlet-red dragon eyes bigger than a human stared at Bert as if he was looking at a piece of food. Bert felt a little nervous and asked, "Who are you?" The dragon opened its mouth and made a thunderous voice. "Humans, food, servants." Bert, who was still a little nervous, suddenly laughed angrily, and he scolded, "You guys are sick, right? Everyone is food and a servant. I hate you guys on the top. We are humans, and we will never give in." The dragon seemed to be provoked, and let out a roar that pierced through everything, shaking the world. Bert got hit by the storm. He flew out on the spot and rolled over 100 meters on the ground before stopping. Bert was not afraid. At the same time, he recalled in his mind the magnificent sword light of Ancient One that filled the whole world. This mere dragon wants to treat human beings as food. Did he ask the Ancient One for permission? Just when Bert thought of that sword light, a giant 7-colored sword light suddenly appeared between heaven and earth, with a terrifying power enough to split the world, and slashed at the dragon. The dragon looked at the light in disbelief and shouted, "This is impossible! How can humans have such power?" The next moment, the dragon and the whole world were split in half by the colorful sword light, and then the world collapsed and disappeared. Bert's consciousness suddenly became blurred. He seemed to have become a dragon, born, played, hunted, and invaded. Various memories flashed one after another like a marquee. These memories are very unclear, just like a dream, and in the real world, the red light on the real dragon skeleton is gradually sinking into Bert's body from the position of the dragon's teeth, making him gradually glow. These red lights are the remnants of the dragon's soul. After it died, it never dissipated. It was attached to the elixir and lingered. After Bert touched it, they took the opportunity to introduce Bert to his spiritual world. Dragon's soul originally planned to destroy Bert's spirit through intimidation, and then occupy his body. Who knew that Bert was not only not frightened, but was very angry? Then, this anger turned into the strongest attack he had ever seen, the sacred sword of Emperor Vishanti. Then the sword shattered the residual consciousness of the dragon's soul. After all, this is just a ray of the remnant. If Bert doesn't come, it will dissipate by itself in a few years. After the consciousness of the dragon's soul was broken, the dragon's soul naturally entered Bert's body. This is what happened. He don't know how long it took. Bert slowly opened his eyes, but they were not human eyes, but fiery red dragon eyes. At the same time, the red light on his body converged behind him, evolving into a huge fiery dragon phantom, lifelike, just like the real thing. Immediately afterward, Bert, who felt full of power, and the fire dragon phantom behind him opened their mouths and let out a roar at the same time. The entire Manhattan Island shook, countless glass shattered, and countless cars sounded crazy alarms. This is not over yet. The originally brightly lit Manhattan Island suddenly turned dark, the power went out, and the city that never sleeps was completely shrouded in darkness. This is an earthquake? The people on the island were stunned and panicked. Some people saw that the surroundings were completely dark, and couldn't help but feel scared. Soon, chaos befell Manhattan Island. Putting these aside, Madame Gao sensed a powerful fluctuation in the apartment, and opened her eyes in disbelief, whispered, "Iron Fist!" That's right, Iron Fist. Bert, who has a dragon soul, is qualified to be called Iron Fist. It should be noted here that although the Manhattan earthquake was indeed caused by Bert, it does not mean that he is strong enough to cause an earthquake. The reason why Manhattan had an earthquake was because Bert resonated with the power of the dragon. This real dragon skeleton was buried underground for thousands of years, and the bones had already been integrated into Manhattan Island's foundation. Manhattan is an outstanding place, and this place is because of the real dragon bones. The TV series, The Defenders, tells the story of the hand who planned to dig the elixir, and once the elixir is dug, Manhattan Island will collapse, so Daredevil and others desperately tried to stop the hand. To put it simply, Manhattan Island is his home ground for Bert, where the power he can use is far more than anywhere else. Beside the elixir, Bert slowly closed his mouth, his eyes gradually returned to normal, and the phantom of the dragon's soul behind him also flew into his body and disappeared. Bert didn't know that he caused the earthquake in Manhattan. He recalled everything just now, took off his shirt, and on his chest, a fiery red dragon with wings was flying recklessly. It was a symbol of the Iron Fist. "I've become the Iron Fist, the world I wonderful. Iron Fist plus Blood God, it's a bit interesting." Bert was a little speechless. When he thought about it, the dragon tattoo quickly disappeared. He didn't like tattoos, and this thing was on his chest. He would have to explain it every time he got a beauty in the future. Then, Bert's mind moved, and his body gradually emitted a red light. This is the power of the dragon's soul. At present, it is not too strong, because Bert has not yet practiced. Of course, this is not a problem. After all, a whole real dragon skeleton is in front of him. Possessing a dragon soul, he is still the blood god Bert, and the elixir that can be refined is far more than others. "Maybe I will be the strongest Iron Fist." Bert smiled slightly. Then, he put away the power of the dragon's soul, put on his clothes and jumped on the skeleton of the real dragon, and then removed the head of the real dragon. After thinking about it, he removed a rib. "I will refine the dragon head myself, break the ribs into pieces, and fuse it for others." Next, Bert used PIM particles to reduce the size of the skull and ribs, and then left here along the holes drilled before. The reason why he didn't take it all was because it would cause an earthquake, and he wasn't afraid of this being stolen anyway. Although Iron Fist could break the seal, if he wants this, he has to come down and had to hollow out the ground first, and this piece of land was now owned by Bert. The place will become the residence of the Blood God group in the future. Without Bert's permission, who could dig in his territory? Back on the ground, Bert returned to his human form. Seeing the darkness around him and a faint roar in the air, he asked Madame Gao in surprise, "What happened?" Madame Gao looked at Bert with complicated eyes and replied, "There was an earthquake just now." "Earthquake? I didn't take all the elixir away. Could it be because of the dragon's soul?" Bert was shocked for a while. That is to say, can he create an earthquake in Manhattan? Madame Gao didn't care about the earthquake. She asked with a bit of hope, "Blood God, have you become the Iron Fist?" Bert raised his right hand. His fist lit up with a faint red light. Madame Gao was immediately excited. Yes, it was the fluctuation of the dragon's soul. The blood god became an Iron Fist. Madame Gao put down her crutches, knelt in front of Bert's knees, and said, "Blood God, I am willing to serve you as Lord, as long as you promise to take me back to Kunlun in the future." Through the Purple Man virus, Wang Bert knew that Madame Gao was telling the truth, not afraid of being frozen. He asked inexplicably, "Why do you want to go back to Kunlun so much? Aren't you a traitor from Kunlun?" Madame Gao said sincerely, "Because Kunlun is my home since I defected, I have wanted to go back. The longer I live, the more I think, even if the people of Kunlun do not accept me, as long as I can be buried in Kunlun, I will be satisfied." Bert put away his iron fist and said lightly, "I robbed the elixir, and I have a hostile relationship with Kunlun. That is to say, if I want to enter Kunlun, it will be a bloodbath." Madame Gao said, "It's okay, I just want to go back to Kunlun. As for the people in Kunlun, all the people I know died long ago. People in Kunlun are not allowed to use elixirs to prolong their lifespan. The only ones who can live for hundreds of years are Shoulao. It is the dragon of Kunlun." Bert was stunned. "Kunlun still has dragons?" "Yes, but it has never appeared in front of people. The dragon's soul of Iron Fist belongs to Shoulao." "A real dragon attaches its dragon's soul to a human?" Bert frowned, and he asked, "How much do you know about Shoulao?" "I don't know much about it. Only Iron Fist understands Shoulao because the inheritance of the dragon's soul needs to be carried out by Shoulao himself." Bert pondered. Madame Gao was not lying, but she had done too many bad things before, to the extent that it was hard to forgive. Madame Gao nervously waited for the sentencing. She knew that this was the closest chance she has to go to Kunlun. Bert the Blood God and Kunlun were destined to meet. At this time, the lights were lit up around, the power of Manhattan Island was restored, and there were cheers all around. Bert felt it, and said to Madame Gao, "I can't forgive you, but I can take you back to Kunlun."